Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Another Dolphins Podcast. Thank you all so much for joining us. A lot to get into in today's show. But before all of that, I don't know if you guys have heard, but we are giving away a free copy of College Football 25. All you need to do to get entered into the drawing is send us a Dolphins-related question. We'll even accept a Miami Dolphins or NFL-related question to AnotherDolphinsPodcast@gmail.com. That's it. That's all it takes. You get 2 additional entries by including a screenshot of you rating the show on your app of choice. Send that stuff to AnotherDolphinsPodcast@gmail.com to be eligible to win a copy of College Football 25. We'll announce that winner on July 7th. You'll have more than enough time to go pre-order the game itself if you are not the winner. That is it. That is all I have to talk about. So let's talk about what you guys are here for, and that is the quarterback market. Joining me to do just that, Joshua Houtz, and returning to the show, Dustin Godin. You can find him on X, the artist formerly known as Twitter, Dustin Godin 13. Gentlemen, happy Tuesday.
Love to see it. Nice to be here with you guys.
Happy Tuesday. Love to be able to come on here and be able to talk about Tua, man. It has to be, like we joke, Jake, as soon as we get off of here, he's probably going to end up signing. But we'll talk all things Tua Tagovailoa with Dustin, who he seems to know a lot more than at least I do, at least the common person.
Dustin, it's been a little while since we had you on, and I wanted to make sure, we wanted to make sure you got the approval of the listeners right away. So can you kind of check your Dolphins fandom for us real quick? Can you give us like a season ticket holder? Let me hear your process because it makes me upset every time I hear it in the best way possible.
Long time fan, born into it. True Dolphins fans, you have to be born into it. Season ticket holder for many years now. Not down in South Florida anymore, up in Orlando, but still drive down for the games and with my family every game. I used to run a little blog back in the old days called Fin Depth, which, spoiler alert, I might be getting back going a little bit. A long time ago, I worked for PFF for a little bit, so that was interesting. It was like that free stuff that they
digesting all their data for them and just that kind of stuff. But the reason it makes me upset is because you'd come on for we'd do like a Thursday show and you'd tell me about your tailgating process and the Sunday fandom of you being a Dolphin fan just seemed so incredible. Just the pregame meals to just enjoying the game at the stadium with your family. It just seemed like 10 out of 10. You're knocking it out of the park each and every Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, family, whiskey, steak, lobster. We do it right.
God, man. But Dustin, it's great to have you joining us. And I wanted to have you on today's show because you really broke it down. You did a great job of really talking about the quarterback market. And Tua Tagovailoa famously said that the market is the market. So I wanted to have you on. And it seems like every day that passes, we think we're getting closer to a Tua Tagovailoa extension. But what are your thoughts on where the Dolphins stand?
So what my thoughts are that they're probably not balking at the annual price or the annual average price. My thought process is that they might be trying to negotiate harder on the guarantees. As much as I love Tua, as much as it was great to see him, make it through the season last year healthy, if you're being real and you're the Dolphins, you're probably saying, hey, 1 year doesn't eradicate 5 in a row. And so we need to have some protection going forward, but we want you here. We want to give you, what you're worth on an annual. That would just be kind of what I'm thinking Greer and Shore are thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's kind of where I'm at too. And that's kind of what keeps going on in your head, right? Because we sit here and we hear the market is the market. And I mean, at this point, it's already more than I think we've ever, it keeps going up every time we come on a podcast, it seems. So we're not going to talk about where that could go. But to me, I feel like the Dolphins almost have to pay Tua Tagovailoa. And I think you hit it nail on the head, whether it's the guaranteed money, whether they're trying to protect themselves from injury, like you said, that's definitely got to be their line of thinking. And on Tua's, if you're looking at it from Tua's perspective, I did get hurt. I did, suffer all those injuries. I want to protect my family. I want to protect myself long term. And at the same time, he showed them every single offseason that, if I have to work on something, I'll work on it. I'll, do that, become, add that to my rapport, my chamber of tools, and on to the next thing. So it's so hard. It's so hard being a Tua stan, so to speak, because that the Dolphins haven't had a quarterback anything like this since Marino, if we're being completely honest. But that money, man, it just makes you balk a little bit. It makes you a little bit queasy. But, the market's a market. And as we say all the time on here, Jake, it's not our money, right?
Right. And
it's such a breath of relief that it's not our money. It's such a breath of relief.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is the market is the market, and you have to establish like where you consider Tua in the hierarchy of the market, right? Like if you think he's up there with where his stats are, you have to pay him 22% of your annual average salary. And like you can't be comparing, he can't make more than Burrow or he can't make more than Herbert or Mahomes because they might be better than him, if that's your opinion. All of those contracts are at least $30 million ago.
Mm-hmm.
And like they were all 22% of their respective annual average ratio to cap at the time of signing. So like, I mean, Burrow, his $55 million was 24.5% of the cap. Now 22% is $56 million. And like Herbert over 23%, Jackson over 23%, Mahomes 22.7%. Like, so we have to establish like if we give to a 26 or if we give to a 56 million, that's 22%. These are the quarterbacks that you're like from a hierarchy, you're putting him behind Burrow, Allen, Herbert, Jackson, Mahomes, Hurts, Murray, even Watson is equal essentially. So like where in the hierarchy does Tua belong in that realm, right? Like that's what everybody has to come around to.
Everybody's really caught up in the headline of the record-setting money in all these contracts, but it's really important to include that context of the cap percentage. So speaking about this conversation, though, we seem like, all right, Tua's going to make, $50 million. That's what Jalen Hurts got. Cool. We're going to go in with that. All right, Jared Goff, he's been to a Super Bowl, 2 conference championship games. He's going to make $53 million, and then you're going to have Tyreek Hill come out and publicly say, I think he even mentioned Jared Goff and saying like, all right, we're going to pay Tua $53 million. Cool, that sounds great. Trevor Lawrence comes out about a week ago, $55 million. He matches Joe Burrow, but the contract doesn't necessarily hurt, quote unquote, as hard as a Joe Burrow contract because 1, the cap percentages we talked about, and 2, Trevor Lawrence still has 2 years left on his rookie deal before that extension even kicks in. How much higher can we go if you're the Miami Dolphins? So, you have Jordan Love out there looking for a deal. Dak Prescott has all the leverage in the world. At one point, we had Chris Greer saying, we want to have him signed by the start of training camp. We don't want this to be a story. Well, guess what? It's June 18th, and whether it's because there's nothing else to talk about or because it's a legitimate story, here we are talking about it. I'm just curious if the Dolphins reach a point that say, okay, Tua, this is fine and great, but if you want the guarantees, we want that average annual salary to go a little lower. And let's be honest here, guys. Like Patrick Mahomes is making $45 million. Josh Allen making $43 million a year is the most insane thing in the world. Josh Allen is under contract through 2028, and that average annual salary being $43 million is mind-blowing to me. At what point do the Dolphins kind of say, like, all right, by doing absolutely nothing except publicly saying you're our guy, your price has gone up $6 million in the last, average annually, just like to simplify it. At what point does Chris Greer say, all right, we saw that things can get a little ugly at times in these negotiations, but they can still work out like we saw Lamar Jackson, that quote unquote got ugly at times and it worked out just fine. When does Chris Greer say, all right, Tua, go see what another team will give you, and then we'll kind of see if we can meet in the middle from there?
Yeah, it's really tough because in that scenario, what you're talking about, we wait one more year. And granted, this year we had kind of an unusual year where we went up 13.5% in cap. Mm-hmm. That's not common. It has happened 2 times in the last 5 years, but traditionally we're more at like 6.9% that it goes up every year.
Nice.
On average. So, if we're talking like you're going to have to pay him the 22+% this year or next year. That's if he duplicates the.
Do you have to? Do you think like at what does somebody else pay him 22%?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, interesting. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I think I'd like to see that. I think there's a world where I think the Dolphins might want to see that conversation be played out.
They might, but my opinion is they'll lose that conversation.
Fair.
Teams in the NFL will absolutely overpay for any quarterback that is remotely good. Whether that's a 1% to 2% overpay, they might on the open market, they might pay him 23 or 24% of the average salary. It's kind of one of those situations that when you get into a bidding war, prices go up.
Is there a point though, Josh, where you see that price reach a point where you think that, all right, maybe a draft pick or two back looks better?
Man, I can't say that. I can't.
June, baby, let's do it.
It's so hard to say. I mean, I feel like 60 million. Like I don't know. I feel like they're already in a predicament where they have to pay him. And you mentioned, Jake, it would be interesting. It would be nice to know, to have that as part of this conversation. This team might want you. Maybe they're saying back when. I don't even want to get into that, but back when they wanted to maybe trade Tua, maybe they have in the back of their mind maybe some teams that did have interest. I would never want to see Tua go, no matter how many picks you get. I just don't know, like you said, Jake, if anyone else would truly step up to the plate. But then back to Dustin's point, I still remember, Daniel Jones making, what he's making, and some of these other teams.
You already forgot what he's making, though. He's not even in the top 10 of the highest paid.
And I was going to say the Giants are also – well, I just get mad at that because I remember people upset we shouldn't give Tua the fifth-year option. But to that point, the Giants are already ready to move on from Daniel Jones. So, I'm glad we're not in the negotiating table trying to figure this out. And, we'll see. Hopefully it all comes to fruition before the regular season, Jake, or are we still talking training camp here? I don't even know when this thing's supposed to get done.
That's the thing. Everything we've heard in the public sounds great. The market is the market stuff is just kind of what it is. I don't think that's a negative or a positive. I really think that's just Tua throwing a fastball right down the middle. And Chris Greer did preach, we don't want this to be a training camp story. Now, all of a sudden today we have Cameron Wolfe on NFL Network saying things along the lines of, let me pull it up here. Sorry, Twitter likes to refresh on its own. Where he said that it's the Dolphins' #1 priority, and there's still hope from both sides to get a deal done before the start of the regular season. All of Miami's star players have been vocal. Tua needs to be paid. That seems like a little bit of a change. Dustin, is there anything that could have negatively impacted the contract negotiations in the last couple of months, whether it be the Trevor Lawrence deal, whether it be the Jared Goff deal?
Yeah, see, I kind of view those deals as beneficial for Tua. And beneficial for the deal getting done. One way you can view it is that, hey, those deals have come in now, so now that boosts Tua up. But you can also look at it as, hey, these are additional data points, additional confirmation points that, hey, quarterbacks are getting paid this now. And this is just the reality of the NFL. And so we just have to, put the girdle in our mouth, bite down, and accept it, I think, is going to essentially be what happens. Because Love is going to get around the same amount of money. Goff, Goff got 53, but really going back to the percentages, that's less than 21%. So right. If you think, historically, elite quarterbacks tend to make around 20 to 25%. If you're not in that realm, what are you doing? You're kind of being disrespectful at that point. And
I was going to ask you, does Jordan Love really screw this thing up? Is that the monkey wrench that could, really tie things up here? I mean, I admittedly try to stay away from the salary cap stuff. I try to let it to people like you and, the CK Parrots of the world. They kind of have a better grasp it. But, you mentioned Jordan Love. I mean, Dak's still lingering. Do either of those guys really throw that monkey wrench that, then at that point you're like, all right, you're playing this season. We'll come back to it in the all season. And at that point, maybe your best thing is a franchise tag. Maybe you are then hoping that a team calls you up, like Jake said, and, puts their money where their mouth is. But oh man, it's just crazy that we've come so far where now we've got a quarterback that we think we, are good with, and we're trying to figure out how to pay him now. It's just things never come easy for the Dolphins. So what are your thoughts? Is it Jordan Love that, stick in the spoke of a bicycle? If that were to go down, are we absolutely in trouble?
So it's going to depend on what he actually gets. I think for me, if I was the Dolphins, the stopping point would probably be 23%. Like I would not go over 23% of 255.4, which is our current cap.
What is that, 56-ish, roughly?
56 is 22%. So like 57.5 or something like that. Like okay. I would not get to that. I would stay under 23% is where I would be. And part of that is the only people that really should get above that point, in my opinion, are people who make it deep in the playoffs. And I know quarterbacks are not the only player on the team, but the past 2 years under McDaniel, there have been some late season collapses, and we need to take that into account.
Can Tua take that into account, you think? Like I could, that's like nothing. I guess my argument is nothing in the last 2 months should have happened that should impact the contract negotiations. I think Tua deserves to be above Goff and Lawrence, and it sounds crazy, the $57 million, but you're making great points about the salary cap. I don't think there was really a gray area there now, but all of a sudden we are talking like, okay, I don't want to go over this point. It's starting as we get closer to training camp. It sounds like we're really flirting with that point.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a free agent, right? And in the past 2 years alone, you have for 30 weeks out of the 34 weeks, you've led in passer rating, and you have had the most yards in the second season of that range, and probably would have in the first season as well if you completed the season. You are probably in that situation where you're like, hey, don't disrespect the results. And I mean, athletes first certainly is very much a pusher of market resets. So they're absolutely just doing their job there. But I guess we have to determine like what if I was Tua and I was athletes first, I would have to determine what kind of a market reset am I happy with? Do I really care about having the highest like commitment level from a team? Meaning, like, do I need to beat Joe Burrow's percentage against the cap that he got, which would be insane because it's kind of insane that he got it, in my opinion. 25% on one player is kind of a hard sell for me. Or I'm sorry, 24.5%. I'm rounding. But, a $56 million still a market reset on the annual average, but it's not a market reset on the percentage of commitment. And so if I was them, that's what I would be looking at or for.
Yeah, I mean, those guys, I mean, for me, it's basically Patrick Mahomes and maybe Josh Allen are at the top of, in my opinion. Lamar Jackson, he probably deserves to be up there as far as those. But the way I also see it is, we're sitting here saying, okay, we should only pay Tua what 50. I think I wrote down. You said you wouldn't go above what 57.5 or roughly around there. I mean, if we really aren't going to lose our quarterback, right, over a couple $1 million this season. I mean, I feel like that's one way to look at this. I mean, maybe Chris Greer and then play hardball. And another thing that we have to remember, I mean, for me, this offense does not run without Tua Tagovailoa at the helm, and I feel like we built it so much and invested so much on this offense, having him at quarterback, having him be that point guard, that guy that works on his, the anticipation, the timing, and things like that make this offense click. I feel like that's probably something he's using, right? This offense would not work without him. I mean, we've seen it with Skylar Thomas. We've seen it with Mike. Well, Mike White did throw that one touch, I think, to Robbie Chosen.
Yeah.
Shout out to Robbie Chosen. But you know what I'm saying. I mean, this offense would not be the same without Tua Tagovailoa, and I think Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins understand it. You also brought up the him having a different agent too. I'm glad you brought that up because early on I think it was Lee Steinberg and that agency. Now he's rep by those guys that do go out there and break the bank. So that definitely has to have a lot to do with them playing hardball. And he foresaw this, right? He foresaw him having this type of season where he's going to be in this situation. So I'm not envious of what the Dolphins are going to do, but I think they have to find a way to get it done. Just makes me feel a little queasy.
Yeah, I mean, So name another team that's out there running with two under, like both their number ones being under 6 foot wide receivers that are speedy. Most other fan bases would be yelling about how that doesn't work. You need bigger guy, you need a big guy, you need a fast guy, you need your tight end. Like, it's a very non-traditional offense because Tua is good enough in certain things that enable us to do that. And to your point, Josh, if we had another quarterback, we would need to build it differently, and we would need a different scheme as well. And we don't have either of those two things. So, we have what we have. And I mean, if you are going to balk, if you're going to lose your quarterback over, $3 million annual average, but really they're not even making that against the cap anyway. Like, look at what's Herbert's actual average cap hit. It's like $27 million if you ignore the final year, which is $78 million in that final year, but none of it is guaranteed. So they could just cut him, they could trade him, they could renegotiate. Like, the real money is in that. And so really, there's this idea out there that 55. A lot of times that's just something the agent can use to be like, hey, I got that for him.
But I guess my concern comes from athletes first, what Tua said, don't you feel like a little queasy that he is going to go all in asking for both the guarantee, like Joe Burrow? Hey, Tua has the leverage of the passer rating, the offense, how well he works in this offense, knowing that nobody will work in this offense as well. And don't get me wrong, I'm definitely not saying that Skylar Thompson can step right in and do anything nearly as close. The offense would fall off an absolute cliff. But I just get a little queasy that this hasn't happened yet, because Tua could have gotten all the headlines. He could have gotten his agent could have gotten yeah, we got that already. Yeah, we did that already. It just makes me wonder if they're in a situation where even just maybe the same side of the magnet going at each other.
So a Joe Burrow deal in 2024 is $62.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think Tua and his camp are asking for that. I think they're staying with that number that starts with a 5. I'm hoping that number that starts with a 5 is closer to 56. That's like my sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we'll have to. I mean, am I a little bit concerned? A little bit, but also, I don't know. There's talk recently about, they're in the ballpark now. So whatever that means.
Is it a big ballpark? Is this a pitcher's ballpark? These are
talking about the Yankee Stadium, or are we talking about the Marlins Stadium?
World Series.
But we know the salary cap over the next. How many years? That's another factor. Years could be the sticking point.
Mm-hmm.
The Dolphins could be saying, "Hey, we're cool with 55. We're cool with $20 million a year guaranteed, or whatever," which is what I believe Lawrence got. We only want to do 2 or 3 more years. We're a little bit afraid that as you age, your arm goes down a little bit, or maybe we have some longevity concerns. We only want to give you 3 years instead of 5 years. Maybe that's a concern. We don't know.
And to that point,
sorry,
Jake, but what's Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel? Where are their contracts? I mean, I believe they're kind of synced up, aren't they? Where maybe, we see Tua and them all kind of, ride this thing out and see if they can win one. That's a good point, though, with the years and things like that.
I wonder if that Chris Greer or Stephen Ross is sitting there and saying, go do it this year, and then all 3 contracts, just name your price. Go in, win 2 playoff games, and name your price on all 3 of them. I don't think that's the way they could operate, but it's getting a little entering that zone of, you do wonder that this is going to continue to be a story. And, just seeing that you have so many quarterbacks, Josh Allen, 43, average annual salary. Kirk Cousins just went and was a free agent. His average salary is $45 million a year, and they drafted a quarterback in the first round. So seeing those things and seeing how it plays off, you just wonder how much the Dolphins are willing to bend the knee for Tua. Dustin, one final question on this. Let's shake the crystal ball. Let's pick Does it happen before training camp? Is it like week 2 of the preseason? Is it, that final week before the preseason or after the preseason and before the regular season? When would you think a deal is going to get done?
I think you alluded to it, when we first jumped on here about, hey, it could be as soon as we hang up the call here.
I like that. That'd be so pure. What about you, Josh? When would you place it?
Yeah. Oh man, I'll go right before training camp, right? Like literally the day they arrive, we'll see Tua sign his new deal. He'll be the first one in the building. Everyone can put that to rest because I'll be, talking about who was the first one in, like we've heard before. I was going to ask you, do either of you see him, potentially holding out? I mean, that doesn't seem like it's who Tua is. I feel like both sides want to get a deal done, but if this weren't to get done before training camp, I mean, are we going to potentially be logging on Twitter and refreshing to see, Tua Tagovailoa is the only person not at camp today, and then. Oh man, could you imagine Twitter for the next few days? That's gonna be fun times.
That might be the thing that would kick me off Twitter. I think that would actually be the last thing I'd need to delete that. But I don't see Tua being a holdout guy for sure. I think he'd be there, and I think it only that's the thing. Like if Tua keeps doing what he did last year, he's going to continue to be able to keep naming his price. Like there's no doubt about that. If he wanted to go down that road, but I do. Why would you not want the security in his situation? But, a lot of questions, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, very, very realistically, if, we were not to get a contract done and they were to say, you know what, play on the 5th year. We're gonna eat that $20 million cap hit on your 5th year option, and we'll pick this up next year. Very realistically, we're looking at a $60 million per year contract next year, and so at some point. The Dolphins are just going to have to say, as the years go on, because we've signed now, there's going to be some bargain that we get back. Mm-hmm. And they'll just have to do that.
How are you feeling about their cap going into next year real quick, Dustin? I know this isn't the most exciting topic, but I mean, they're already 10 million over and Tua's not on that, cap. It's going to be another offseason of juggling, it looks like ahead.
Yeah. I mean, there's things that they can do. I haven't really looked too deep into next year yet, but I'm sure re-signing Phillips to a longer deal, we can push some of his money down. We can. I think Chubb is probably a cut candidate at that point. I mean, Chop has got to come in and prove that we can do that. And not lose production. But I think that's probably why we did that. I also think, and this might be a bit of a hot take, but I also think Hill won't be here next year. That's kind of, I think the Dolphins are long-term out on Hill. That's why they're paying Waddle. And then they're hoping the Washingtons and, whoever we maybe draft another person next year. I think they've just been training Waddle to be Hill's replacement, slot in and then slot Washington into Waddle's role going forward. And that's kind of where I think we're going to save a bunch of our money.
Do you see him also paying Javon Holland? I didn't hear you throw his name out there, and I know that's kind of one of those guys that, maybe we want to see what he can do in this new defense before he inks that new deal. But long-term, thinking about a defense without Javon Holland, it makes me a little bit sad. So you think he gets locked up too, or? Yeah.
I hope and pray every night before I go to sleep.
So promising. Oh, so promising. Safety market is so weird too, man. When you see Jordan Poyer, $2 million, Deshaun Elliott, his massive 2-year deal with the Steelers was for $6 million, right? Like that's a little crazy to me.
Yeah. And didn't a safety or was that a cornerback? Who was the guy who just broke like all highest paid like non-quarterback player?
Brandon Jones on his 3-year, $21 million deal with the Broncos.
That was legitimately, like, I liked Brandon Jones in some roles, but like he was a bit of a limited
not
player.
That much.
Yeah, no. Like to me, he was like a tweener between a safety and a linebacker. Like, I don't know.
He would have been perfect doing what Jordan Poyer did for the Bills last year.
I'm very excited about Jordan Poyer. I mean, I was really banging the table hard for him last offseason and didn't think we'd have a chance this offseason. But
people forget that the Dolphins entered the offseason $50 million over the salary cap, handful of draft picks to work with, but I think they've done a pretty good job of really revamping this roster. It was actually reported today that the Dolphins will begin rookie training camp, July 16th with the veteran players, then following on July 23rd. Training camp, guys, is a month away. Dustin, do you ever get to any of the practices?
When I lived down there, I used to go to at least one a year. I used to go to at least the scrimmage, and then I would go to like one of the ones at the just like the regular ones. These days, I don't tend to make it down there anymore. So probably not.
As corny as this sounds, that's like a bucket list thing. I think we had a plan to go down, whatever your COVID was. I was so stoked to get down there for training camp. So definitely got to do it, man, because it's so fun to be able to see some of those rookies and guys, that you get hyped up for, going out there in the underwear and doing their thing, right?
I wanted to ask you guys, we have about a month to really shoot our shots here. Who are some of the underrated signings of this offseason? I did just free agents, but I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on some players we should really start hyping up before training camp gets going.
I'll let you go first, Josh.
Okay, yeah. Well, I saw yours, Jake, so I'm not going to throw out the one. I do keep seeing these videos going around, Jonnu Smith, and I think we've talked about it, Jake. He's going to be absolutely a monster. But I think we're trying to look for guys a little bit, maybe more under the radar. So the two names that stuck out to me, first, Jack Driscoll. I think the Dolphins signed him for roughly $1.79 million. 17 starts throughout his career, 8 at right tackle, 8 at right guard, and at left tackle as well. So I think this guy could definitely compete for guard. I think there's a very good chance he could potentially start at guard. So he's one guy I'm watching. And then on the other side of the ball, I have Benito Jones written down. Started 15 games out of the 34 there with Detroit Lions. We know he was here with the Dolphins a little bit, but can be that big presence in the middle of that defense that, maybe the Dolphins want in that rotation. So those are the two names that really stuck out for me. Two guys that are not really making the, that crazy salary that I do think can have a role, although just depth on this team this coming season. What about you, Dustin? Did I give you some more ideas?
Dustin, do you have ones for offense and defense?
I don't have for both sides, but I probably could. So when we brought this as a topic, I sat there thinking, I was like, okay, all the moves, even I included even like re-signings of guys like Waddle and stuff like, which is a very big thing because we could have waited, 2 more seasons to do that, like we did with Wilkins and, potentially lost them. So it's a big thing that we locked them up for the next, 8 years, I think, or 8 seasons.
Through 2028, I think he's under contract. So he'll be here for at least 8 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a big deal, but my choice was, and it sounds like from Josh, you might have outed Jake on his, but Jonnu was my pick. I was very excited when we picked Jonnu. Legitimately, Tua is the best quarterback that he will have played with in his career. Now, granted, 2019, 2020, Tannehill was pretty impressive in Tennessee. But we all know his limitations and we all know what he's good at and what he's not good at. And we all, I think, agree that Tua is better than Tannehill was. And so I'm like, other than that, it's what Mac Jones and Desmond Ridder, like not impressed, but I am impressed with his production given the quarterback play that he's had. And like last year, he had a 100 quarterback rating when being thrown at. He had 112, in 2020 with Tannehill. Like the black hole of the Patriots, I ignored that tape completely because I watched a little bit of it and it wasn't his fault. So, I'm very pumped to have a tight end that isn't a pure like straight line seam route jump ball tight end that like we had in Gesicki and can actually do some blocking. So he's my probably my most underrated signing because probably most people aren't expecting him to perform that much considering we have OBJ, behind Hill and Waddle. But I think he'll be used a bit more than we expect. I'm guessing 500 yards, 7 touchdowns.
It's so weird because people forget that while the Dolphins targeted tight ends 4.5% of the time, I think it was, Durham Smythe was actually third on the team with 35 receptions. I think it was 43 targets off the top of my head. So you just see the balance and the volume of Tyreek Hill and Waddle. And I was leaning Jonnu Smith, but I wanted to even be more of a hipster. And I wonder with Jonnu Smith, seeing he's going to be on the field all the time, Mike McDaniel's offense. I'm going down this direction because it's June 18th, I swear. The Dolphins had the cheat code of Alec Ingold. Right? We had the fullback who can catch and he can block. And the Dolphins, for the love of God, could not get a single yard on the ground in 3rd and 1, right? They're always trying to pass the ball. They're always trying to do a lot of different things. I wonder if Jonnu Smith, considering he will be on the field a lot, he will be the team's number 1 tight end. At least I assume so, unless Durham Smythe just continues to be just the silent killer out there. Could he just be another distraction for this offense? Is there any fear that Mike McDaniel is going to see him and be like, he's going to be the perfect distraction every single play, to the point that he's not even, the value of the distractions there anymore? Is there any of that fear?
Well, I mean, historically, Jonnu has been a little bit of a decoy in his role on multiple teams now. So maybe. Mm-hmm. There's only one ball kind of deal, right? So it is going to be difficult, as long as, we're done with this Tyreek 2K stuff, I think he can be productive. If the point of the offense, again, is to route every single thing through Tyreek, I think it's going to be difficult for him to have, super productive numbers, but the defense is still going to have to account for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you that we need to get away from just force feeding at times, just absolutely force feeding him. But I don't think, Jonnu Smith can really be that decoy when you look at all those other guys, right? If you're more concerned about Jonnu Smith when you see a Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill out there, then that defense is probably in for trouble, right? And then let's not forget Devon Achane, like we mentioned. I mean, him coming out of the backfield doing some of that stuff. So I don't know that teams will over account for what Jonnu Smith can do, but you talked about him in comparison to Gesicki. I mean, this guy can actually break tackles, right? I don't know that I've ever seen Gesicki break a tackle. He can pick up the yards after the catch. I don't know if I've ever seen Gesicki pick up yak. And Durham Smythe, Jake was mentioning him being a little bit of a presence last season. He's run a visor this year, and I joke, but maybe we'll see Durham Smythe. Maybe we'll see Durham Smythe put those video game numbers. So the tight end unit, I like the tight end unit a lot more with Jonnu Smith. So I like that. Jake, did you throw your guy out there? Did you touch?
I was ranting about Jonnu. And last thing about him, only tight end since the start of the 2022 season to exceed 20 miles per hour on the field. He did that twice. He's got the breakaway speed for the McDaniel offense, and one of the best welcome to 2024 NFL for this sentence. He's one of the best at getting open on a tight end screen as well. So I think McDaniel could do some fun things with that.
It seems like every single year, even with the Patriots, he would have a little bubble screen or something that he would catch and take it 60 yards to the house.
Convoy, the whole thing.
Yeah, it's insane.
My player, and I saw people get mad that he got some sort of hype on the internet just because he's a little out there. But people get mad when you get a little excited about a 6'4" tight end who 28% of his career receptions are touchdowns, and that's Jody Fortson. Suffered and torn Achilles in 2021. Missed all of last season due to a shoulder injury, but I keep looking for ways that Miami's offense can just be so dynamic and so unique. And I look back to last year about how well the Dolphins ran the ball inside the 10-yard line. I think that might be something that opposing defenses focus in on. And the counter of that could be getting a 6'4" tight end involved in the offense. I think back to, Stephen Ross loved Adam Gase. He loved those Peyton Manning Broncos. That's the type of mind he wanted running things. Well, Julius Thomas, he had 12 touchdowns on 43 receptions in his Pro Bowl 2014 season. 28% of his receptions were for touchdowns. So I have this crazy madman, tinfoil hat theory that maybe Jody Fortson could turn into our Julius Thomas, that guy who just maybe isn't the greatest from the 20 to 20, but man, you put him in the red zone and you just found a way for this offense to be unstoppable. That's my crazy theory for June 18th.
Not literally our Julius Thomas, though, right? Because didn't he come here for a season? It was absolute buns.
Dude, he was super buns.
He got hurt, right? Or
I think
now I feel like a jerk.
I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't remember.
But it was just one of those guys who Thomas was in Jacksonville, he was in Miami, and he never really stuck. He tried to be in those other offenses that didn't work. I just see the skill set of Fortson, the body type, and I see what Mike McDaniel can do as a play caller and think, all right, this is something along those lines where it can be a little game breaky, where he might not be the best football player, but he might be the best at catching a ball from 4 yards away when you're gunning it 20 feet in the air. I don't know.
Yeah, possibly. When we signed him, I think my initial like knee-jerk reaction was like, oh, this is another tight end project that, we already have like 3 of those guys.
Yep.
But
Another model to build.
After watching him a bit, I do see some intrigue there.
Throw some of those fades to him, Mike McDaniel. How many times they throw him down there at the goal line? There you go. Just throw one up to him. And intrigue name though, Jake. That's a good one there. I mean,
the absolute worst thing that came out of Hard Knocks was Mike McDaniel getting up in that podium and just talking all kinds of trash about his call to make, fades. And then the very next week he does 2. I was like,
I can't believe it. There had to be some sort of like, he's got to be, right? He's got to be overthinking it too much where he thinks that his opponents are watching Hard Knocks, right? That's got to be what's happening there.
Playing some like 5-dimensional chess.
Oh my God. We did have Mark Schlereth on where he did go into like a discussion where he felt that Mike McDaniel falls into the trap where based on opposing defenses, he always tries to get the last word in and call that perfect play. And I think that might lead to some of those issues. That's something I'd like to kind of do as a project where that's the only thing I can think of outside of we're all going absolutely insane listening to this guy say this is a trash play call. And then he continues to do it. That's the only possible thing I could think of. Going a little long here. I'm sorry, guys, but I have one more name to throw out if we have the time here. Looking at this Dolphins defense, they were one of the best teams at getting to the quarterback last year. The pressure rate was through the roof. Bradley Chubb led the Dolphins 11 sacks in 16 games. He'll probably start the season on PUP. Zach Sealer, 10 sacks in 17 games. Christian Wilkins now with the Raiders, 9 sacks in 17 games. Jalen Phillips, 6.5 sacks in 8 games. AVG, 6 sacks in 17 games. Emmanuel Agba, 5 sacks in 15 games. So outside of that word vomit there, I'm really trying to like lay down the point that the Dolphins are going to need to find some sort of value, some sort of production, someone generating sacks on that defensive line, especially early. There's still talent in that unit. I didn't want to go with Neville Gallimore because he has 4 career sacks in his 4 seasons. That's just way too high for me. So how about Tier Tart? He set a career high 1.5 sacks in 2022. He had 1 sack last season. That's 2.5 sacks in his career. The Dolphins have done a great job this offseason of really adding a bunch of prove-it deal type veterans. And I could see Tier Tart coming in, and then all of a sudden we're sitting here maybe June 18th, 2025, looking back like Tier Tart had 5.5 sacks? You got to be kidding me. And that doesn't sound like a lot, and that doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but you got to consider that Miami would have gotten a 5th-round comp pick for AVG if they didn't sign Jordan Brooks. And then if you sprinkle in, they would have gotten a 6th-rounder for Raekwon Davis if they didn't sign Aaron Brewer. I think there's some opportunities here where the Dolphins can generate picks down the road by really letting these interior defensive linemen thrive, having these opportunities to eat, surrounded by Jalen Phillips, Zach Sealer, where somebody's got to get to the quarterback. Why not be him?
Yeah, I mean, Tier plays with pretty high intensity, except for that one, the year that, he left the team because I guess he was having some, disagreements with coaching or something. And there was a pretty visible lack of motor, I would say, that year. But in previous years, I would say he was always a high motor, high effort, type player. And he's a big boy. So, he could, bull rush those centers, if we want.
This is where I just like to do the hashtag in Anthony Weaver we trust, right? I mean, he's a defensive line coach. He wanted to bring in a lot of these guys, to try to mix and match before we saw the Calais Campbell signing. So, yeah, man, why not Tier Tart? I threw out Benito Jones' name as well. So we'll see who really steps up. But I like that unit again a lot more. We talked about in previous pod, a lot more this week than we did weeks before after that Calais Campbell signing. So, yeah, man, why not Tier Tart?
You guys have any insights on like any expectations on Chop this year?
I was listening to the Ringer, the Athletic Football Show, and they were talking about how Chop Robinson can do a lot of interesting things from inside compared to outside. They were discussing that the what was the Nick Saban saying? The speed to power when he's going around the outside isn't there yet, so we can kind of get flush at plays. But that initial first step, that quick step, the way they were talking about it, man, different player completely, don't get me wrong, but it kind of felt like Christian Wilkins, that first step that's just so impactful in crashing that offensive line and letting other guys find holes. That kind of intrigued me about Chop Robinson maybe being a disruptor, just that heat-seeking missile that just breaks into the front of the offensive line and causes some ripples. That seemed kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think I'm intrigued to see what the defense can evolve into once we get a healthy Jalen Phillips back, once we get Bradley Chubb. But early on, it would be so nice, right, for Chop Robinson to at least show that he's ready and capable and to go out there, maybe get a few sacks in their absence. So I don't know what my expectations are this early for him. I tweeted out, I think over under 6.9 sacks. I was just trying to make a joke. And a lot of people, that seems to actually be right around the area in which some folks are thinking. So I think like right around that, I want to say 6 sacks, but I feel like 5 sacks is we can probably be happy with that. But either way, it's not the sacks, right? We saw it in college. This dude's just a disruptor. It's that first step. It's just the way that, there's so much more he can expand on his game. Who knows what tools he'll develop next to a Jalen Phillips, next to a Bradley Chubb, because I still think he's raw in that aspect. So Dustin, did you have any expectations for him or maybe early thoughts? Because you did pose a question.
Yes. So my thoughts around Chop, on draft night, it was so left field that I was kind of one of those people that was just like, oh man, plus I really wanted an offensive lineman. But after watching him a good amount, my takeaway is that if he's not on the edge on obvious passing downs, Anthony Weaver is doing something wrong. Like he needs to be out there on the edge on 3rd and long, like every single one of them, 3rd and long, like find a way to make it happen, because he will, like, to me, his rawness is much more in the run game. Like I would be concerned putting him out there on 3rd and short. I would probably take him off the field in that situation. But with the speed, and I actually think his speed to power is decent. It can still get better, but it's not like a deficiency. Right. He probably can use a little bit more refinement on some of his pass rush moves too. But part of the reason why he hasn't developed those is because he hasn't needed some of them because of his speed. He's going to be now facing every tackle is going to be fast or faster than, the fastest guys in the college. So he's going to have to develop some of that. But I think on 3rd and long, put him out there in a wide 9 or even at a 7 tech, and he's just going to disrupt. And if Anthony Weaver's not doing that, I'm going to be sad.
Over under 6.5 if he plays as that pass down.
6. I'll go under because 6 is like my number.
You got 11 sacks out the door. Christian Wilkins, Andrew Van Ginkel, Emmanuel Ogbah. Who do you guys think leads the team in sacks by the end of next season when you consider the Bradley Chubb and the Jalen Phillips injury, things like that?
It's going to be tough because Kalis, everybody's like penciling Kalis Campbell as an interior guy, but that's not really been his thing. Even last year, he's an edge guy. He can play both, but historically he plays more at edge than he does on interior. So are we making I know Omar went out there and was like, we need him for interior, and like everybody picked up on that. And I love Kalis. I'm a Hurricanes fan, so long history of except for him taking out Tannehill in that year for us, but
every time
he's going to be an edge guy for us, and it's going to be by committee. I don't think we're going to have the sheer this guy has 15. I don't think we're going to see that.
I'd like for it to be Jalen Phillips, but I think he's one of those guys that's probably going to start maybe early on in the pup. I was going to say Shaq Barrett just because he's going to get some of those reps, early on. And, maybe later in the year, he becomes one of those guys that you kind of just throw in there on 3rd down passer. So we'll see. I like this unit. And I think with Jake, why we did this was, they lost so many nice pieces, but some of these players they signed, can play. And I'm excited for, even the Tierra Tarts, the Benito Joneses of the world, because Dolphin fans should be.
Dustin, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I know it's very warm up here, so I have to imagine down in Florida it's pretty steamy too. But that is it. That is all the time we have today on Another Dolphins Podcast. If you want to win a copy of College Football 25, shoot us an email. If you want some great Dolphins commentary, be sure you're following Dustin at Dustin Godin 13. That is it. That is all the time we have today. Thank you so much for listening to Another Dolphins Podcast. We will be back with another show soon, but until then, fins up.
Fins up.